Hello and welcome to all the listeners of this channel. Thank you for taking your time out to watch this video. In this video, I am trying to continue my series on addressing the objections that Muslims raise regarding the deity of Jesus. And I've already done 3 videos prior to this, and you can look it up in my playlist. In this video, I'll try to check on John 14 verse 28, where a few Muslims will take this verse, actually a part of this verse, to discredit the deity of Jesus. And the verse goes like this. The part that they take is this: "For the Father is greater than I." So some Muslims take this phrase and say this. See, Jesus says that the Father is greater than him. If the Father is greater than him, then how can he be God? So that's the objection that they try to bring out from this verse. But I want to make all of you look at this verse within the context of this chapter and within the context of the whole book of John. So let's start off with this chapter itself. If you look at chapter 14, now chapter 14 is where this verse comes in. In chapter 14 verse 1, we read like this: "Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me." So Jesus is telling to his disciples, you do have a faith relationship with God. You also need to have a faith relationship with me. So Jesus is equating himself with the Father when it comes to somebody having a faith-based relationship. And then, who is this God about whom Jesus speaks in verse 1? It's his Father. See, Jesus has a sonship, an exclusive sonship that no one else in this world has to the Father. And then Jesus claims in verse 3 that he goes and prepares a place for the disciples. He will come back and take them to be with Jesus, so that they may be with Jesus. And then in verse 6 of chapter 14, Jesus answers Thomas, "I am the way and the truth and the life." See, there are definite articles present in those verses with regard to those three important words: the way, the truth, and the life. And Jesus makes a claim that no mere human being can ever say. No one comes to the Father except through me. So Jesus is making a claim that Jesus is the only means of salvation to anyone in this world. He is the only truth that people can look up to in order to know something about God. He is the life. He is not just the giver of life, he is the life. Now these are things that only God can claim about himself, and Jesus makes those claims. And then when you move on to verse 10, you read this: "Don't you believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me?" So there is a mutual indwelling of the Father and the Son to each other. So we saw three things right now. In verse 1, we saw that the disciples need to believe in Jesus as they believe in God, put faith in him, which is something that mere humans can't just tell. And then Jesus says that he is going to prepare a place for them, and he will come back and he will take them to be with him. And thirdly, he makes exclusive claims regarding the relationship that human beings have with the Father. He is the only means through whom one can have a relationship with the Father. And fourth, in verse 10, we see that Jesus indwells the Father and the Father indwells in Jesus. So there is a mutual indwelling which no mere human being can ever speak of. And Jesus reaffirms that in verse 11: "Believe me that when I say that I am in the Father and the Father is in me," or at least believe on the evidence of the works themselves. And then verse 13 and 14, the next proof regarding the deity of Jesus is seen in verse 13 and 14. and I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You may ask me anything in my name, and I will do it. So Jesus claims to answer prayers that are directed to him. Answering prayers, receiving prayers, and answering prayers are characteristic of God alone, not for any human beings. All right? And then the next argument coming in verse 15 is that if you love me, keep my commands. So he is somebody who has the authority to issue commands, and he is somebody who is powerful and has authority. So he demands allegiance to him. And with all of these arguments that I have just mentioned, I want to take you to the context of the Gospel of John itself. The Gospel of John begins with the statement like this, affirming Jesus' deity right away at the start. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So the Word who became flesh in verse 14 of chapter 1, he is God. Jesus, before he became a man, he pre-existed with the Father eternally. He is the medium through whom all things were created. John's Gospel chapter 1, and I'll read to you verse 2 and 3. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. Verse 4. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. So all mankind find their true light in Jesus Christ. So throughout the Gospel of John, the deity of Jesus is repeatedly said again and again. And then going to chapter 10 verse 30, Jesus says, I and the Father are one. So there is an essential equality that Jesus claims regarding himself to the Father. So the video will go long if I keep saying about more and more proofs. So the fact that Jesus is God along with the Father and the Spirit is an ever-present truth in the Gospel of John. So in what sense should we understand that the Father is greater than Jesus? See, there is essentially nothing different between the two. However, functionally they are different. In terms of relationships, they are different. In terms of roles and relationships, the Father is greater than Jesus, not in essence. I'll explain to you. A human father and a human child are equal in essence. They both are human beings. At the same time, there are differences in the roles that they have towards each other, and the differences in the relationships that they have to each other. Now, just because my child is younger than me, obviously, because my child is younger than me, that doesn't take away any humanity from my child. That child has as much as humanity as I have. So, the Father being greater than Jesus is in terms of roles and relationships. How do we explain that? So let's turn to John's Gospel 1 again to see how this works. Verse 3. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. So the Father creates everything, and the means through whom God creates everything is the Son. So in creation, in salvation, in judgment, in sustenance, everything, the Father is the chief planner. The Father is the supreme authority. And all of those actions, all of those works are all done with the agency of the Son. So in terms of the roles, so let me ask you this: who died on the cross? Is it the Father or Jesus? It's Jesus. Who sent Jesus? So Jesus repeatedly says, I came to do the will of him who sent me. So the sender is greater in authority than the one who is sent. Okay? The sender is greater in authority than the one who is sent. The Father is greater in authority over Jesus because the Father sends Jesus. Jesus came to do the will of the Father. So, the difference in authority and difference in roles and relationships does not negate the fact that Jesus is God. So, my advice to all of you who are reading the Bible to study and to understand what the claims of Jesus are, study with an unbiased mind, study within the context of the verses that are quoted. Don't just take a verse out of context which suits your agenda and then try to see the Bible for what it is. Rather, read the whole verse. Now, let me just come back to the 14 verse 28 here. You heard me say, I am going away and I am coming back to you. If you loved me, you would be glad that I am going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I. So Jesus is going back to the Father who sent him. So what is that in this context? See, only when Jesus dies, resurrects, and goes back and sits at the right hand of the Father will the purification of sins be complete. See, the thing about God and us is that without a purification of sins that happen on our side, nothing can reconcile us to God. And Jesus has come at the behest of the Father to live a life which you and I were supposed to live, to die a death that you and I were supposed to die, to be resurrected, and hence defeat sin and death forever. And after defeating sin and death forever, he goes back and sits at the right hand of the Father, waiting for his kingdom to be received. So, him going back to the Father is so crucial. So, you can't miss the point, this point over there. So, rather than this verse negating the deity of Jesus, this verse actually promotes the deity of Jesus by saying that he goes to the Father and is seated at the right hand of the Father, and that seating at the right hand of the Father is an equivalent of saying he is equal to the Father. The Jews who put Jesus to trial understood that. How do I know that? Let's take Mark's Gospel chapter 14. Mark's Gospel 14 and verse 62. I am. Okay, let me read 61 and 62. But Jesus remained silent and gave no answer. Again the high priest asked him, Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? I am, said Jesus. And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming in the clouds of heaven. The high priest tore his clothes. Why do we need any more witnesses? He asked. You have heard the blasphemy. What do you think? So they understood what he was trying to say. To sit at the right hand of the Father means that he is claiming equality with God. So that sitting at the right hand of the Father happens when he goes to the Father. So when he goes to the Father, he is going to go back to the Father who sent him. So there is authority and submission involved. At the same time, there is equality involved. So it will take the Spirit of God to help us understand these two things and reconcile it. So may God help you all. And I hope this will be a benefit for all of you. And I hope you all study the Word of God and read the Word of God within its context and understand its meaning within its context. Thank you so much.